Hey everybody, it's me again, and I am super sorry. I said that this was not going to take a month, and I really thought I could make it, not with a month. I mean, you know what I mean? But due to family visits, a shocking, moment that has been painful, and a temporary writer's block, and being very depressed by this movie, it was actually very hard to get through it and to make it work. I I was unable to get this final part of Snow White together. So, why a part three? Well, we've already talked about the controversies behind the scenes and in front of the camera for the interviews. We've talked about the movie itself and how I felt about it. And what's there left to talk about? Well, I'd like to talk about how it could be fixed. Because, frankly, this movie has been an absolute depression to watch. Why? Because there were a lot of good moments in there, but it was masked by everything that Disney should not be doing. I and yeah, I just want I want to see how this movie could have been improved on. Maybe we can totally write a Snow White of our own. I there are I mean one of the things that I like that Movie Fan and I came up with was how a movie could be redeemed. We've already redeemed Rockadoodle, and I've kind of redeemed what I could of Kirk Cameron Saves Christmas. Yes, I actually did that. But I'd also like to see if I can redeem Snow White. I because I really do believe that that almost every bad movie has something good in it and maybe can be redeemed. There's very few movies that I say cannot be redeemed. I'm still waiting to see how somebody can redeem Fox and the Hound 2. If you have suggestions, please, please, please leave in the comments, because I don't know how I could redeem that movie. But I digress. I I really do believe that this movie, yes, has a lot of good qualities hidden under a curtain of bad effects, lazily portrayed ideologies, and a broken script. This version won't, this version I would rewrite is not going to be perfect in any way, and the images that I show are probably not going to be perfect in any way. But I'd like to redeem the good qualities and amplify it in a way that I think would feel maybe magical, a little modern, slightly, and definitely treating the dwarf characters community more respectfully. Would it be better than the remake? I'll let you decide. Let's start off behind the scenes. First of all, for the director, I say let's get Kenneth Branagh, who directed Cinderella, to be the director. The 2015 remake. Gosh, I can't believe how many Cinderella movies there are. But let's get Kenneth Branagh. He'd likely make it more visually pleasing, and the costumes will look phenomenal. Maybe even include Rob Marshall as co-director slash producer. He was the one who worked on the Little Mermaid remake as well as Brandy's Cinderella, and his advantage in those movies was the dancing and the camera work. I found that Greta Gerwig was uncredited, but still part of the screenwriting, and in this version, she's gone and replaced with Dana Fox, who worked for Wicked and Cruella 2021. I'll keep the composers and the music writers since you could have better songs under better direction. Maybe keep Mark Platt on as producer. Definitely keep Sandy Powell as the costume designer, since she's the one who designed the amazing costumes of the 2015 Cinderella. And I know that the costumes right now in the remake movie don't look good, but you know what? Again, better direction. maybe even whoever was doing the lighting I can do a better job at making those costumes look amazing. And you know what? Maybe even team her up with Jenny Bevan, who designs the Ever After and 2021 Cruella costumes. Now that would be a winning goal. As for the casting, for now, I am not entirely creative on this one, so I'm just going to say we're going to keep the two main actresses. We are going to keep Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, as long as they are both given good direction. Unfortunately for this version, there's nothing I can do about Zegler's interviews / Twitter behavior, but we'll focus on the character she plays. For the dwarves, we're going to keep them dwarves and not ugly CGI, and cast actual people with dwarfism, newcomers and stars. Keep Martin Klebe as Grumpy, though frankly I think Peter Dinklage would have been a superior Grumpy. I mean, seriously, he's the perfect choice. But then again, if he declines the role, maybe give TikToker Pete Motzingo his wish by having his brother star as Grumpy. Maybe Dylan Postl as either Happy or Dopey. But definitely put out a casting call for anyone with dwarfism who has dreamed of being an actor. Make their dream come true. Oh, and maybe have some of them on the script writing. Ask them for feedback while writing on the script, or if any of them are good writers, then have them on your team, for goodness sake. Instead of assuming that deleting them will make things better. Guys, you cannot call yourself progressive in name. You actually have to put effort into it. That was the mistake that Pan 2015 made for the Native Americans, and the accursed 2020's music made for the autistic community. Think about it, guys, okay? One of the things I really hated about this movie was how it was more focused on being modern, that it forgot how to write a good story first. A moral will sink in better if the story is good first. It's why a lot of simple stories like The Good Samaritan, Androcles and the Lion, The Emperor's New Clothes, Pinocchio, and Snow White stay with us into adulthood. We remember the characters and the lessons that we learned in these adventures. Nowadays, Disney seems to forget the importance of a good story in order to let the moral naturally play out. The themes in this movie involve leadership, girl power, being fearless, fair, brave, and true. So, if we're going to keep those morals, and not entirely be the same as the 1937 movie, again, because of how live action works, I cannot entirely copy the originals, so while also not being ashamed of the legacy of it, can Disney be allowed to make its own live-action version of Snow White that is at least good in story and has its own identity? Each of the best and the worst Snow White movies had an original identity that made them stand out, whether it was having an actress from Twilight being the main role, or the phenomenal costumes in Mirror Mirror, the dwarves who are the days of the week in Fairest of Them All, or even the different times that Snow White crosses over with other fairy tales. So, yeah, be a new Snow White, or an original Snow White. That's what you did in 1937. When it comes to coming up with the idea for this new version of the story, one of the first things I will say is, if you're going to keep it 2 hours, make it worth 2 hours and not pad out the wrong moments. Second, get rid of that narrator. If it wants to keep the book, great, but it doesn't need a voiceover narration to explain everything. Show, don't tell. We're going to keep a few things from the remake because clearly they want to. You want Dobby to talk? Okay, let's give him an actual reason for it and not just fear. You want to give him you want to give him a serious edge and not be comedic? Okay, fine, we'll do that. Um, you want Snow White to be a modern girl boss? Okay, she has to earn that, as well as earn her crown. You want the dwarves to be magical? You could make the slim argument that they kind of already are. But they need to be treated as actual characters. You want the tone to be taken seriously? Then fine. Have faith in your audience rather than tell them how to do it. This is the same audience that wants to believe in flight, fairies, and wishes in the midst of pain. Let them decide if it's going to be literal or figurative. That's a sign of good storytelling. All right, we've got our pieces set in place, and, well, let us begin this new story. A king and queen's carriage gets stuck in the middle of a snowstorm, and the queen gives birth to a little girl. She names her Snow White, not because she braved it, but because she brought them hope when they were stuck in the storm with nowhere to go. So her name is a reminder to never give up hope in the midst of a storm. Unfortunately, the queen dies in childbirth, leaving the father to grieve. Somewhere beyond in the woods is a witch whose beauty is unmatched. In the mirror, she can see the royal carriage with the father and baby and dead queen. She decides this is an opportunity to become the new queen. She causes the storm to clear a path for the royal carriage, allowing the king and the baby to safely pass through and lead them to her. She shelters them and and the king asks to marry her. Through the course of 6 years, Snow White grows into a wonderfully sweet girl. She joins the palace bakers in making apple pies for the citizens. Her father shows her the wishing well, reminding her that when she makes a wish, hold on to it, and someday it may come true. The queen watches all of this, tolerating it and barely participating because she is patiently waiting for an opportunity. She concocts a plan to overthrow the king and make it look like it was an attack. Both the queen and the king go out riding for a hunt, which they had done before, and the king is killed. The queen comes back as though she escaped by the skin of her teeth, and her fine hunting dress is shredded. When asked what happened, she says that a band of dwarves killed him with their pickaxes while he was hunting. The king and Snow White are in mourning. Slowly but surely, her true colors are revealed. She sends Snow White to do chores, saying that the servants need help, cuts her hair, and dresses her in rags. The queen daily inquires of her mirror, who is the fairest in the land. More years go on, and Snow White is mostly alone. After sweeping the courtyard, she sees the wishing well, reminding her of her father. She looks into it, sees her reflection, and makes her first wish in years. I wish to be free, and sings a song about it, fairly close to waiting on a wish, or even straight up waiting on a wish. The gates open, with the guards bringing in a servant who tried to escape. Snow White secretly follows, knowing it cannot be good. She's brought before the queen and shown the food in her pouch. Snow White watches in horror as the queen uses her magic to kill her for the court to see, establishing fear. Instantly, Snow White's faith in holding on to a wish is almost shaken. Afterwards, the queen goes to her mirror and says, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" And he says, "Famed is thy beauty, Majesty, But oh, a lovely maiden I now see. Rags cannot hide her gentle grace. Alas, she is more fair than thee, and reveals Snow White's image. She cannot be, exclaims the queen. She then looks out to see Snow White back at the wishing well, saying a prayer. Though not at all looking more beautiful than the queen, she could still see a different kind of beauty that is not physical. She summons the huntsman and orders her to take Snow White into the forest, kill her, and bring back her heart in a jeweled box. The queen gives her a prettier dress to wear and allows the two to go out close to the forest. She gleefully picks apples, offers it to the huntsman, who is feeling sick. He tries to kill her, but can't, and tells her, "The queen will stop at nothing to kill you. Run into the woods and hide." She runs as fast as she can, and is afraid the queen enchanted the woods too. She sees all she knows. Everything seems to grab at her until finally she collapses from exhaustion and prepares for death as a pair of bright eyes meet her. As the figure walks into the light, she sees it's just a baby deer. The other animals like birds and rabbits sense her distress and discomfort. Suddenly she realizes the queen doesn't control everything. Maybe hope is real, she ponders. They lead her into an empty cottage belonging to 7 dwarfs. She's not sure who lives here when she sees the furniture and is too exhausted to guess who lives there. She sees the 7 little beds with the names Doc, Happy, Sneezy, Dopey, Grumpy, Bashful, and Sleepy. As she crashes onto 3 of the beds. Meanwhile, 7 dwarfs, all different ages, Doc being the oldest and Dopey being the youngest, maybe 20s or so, are gleefully working in the mines, singing Dig, 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 the old version of it, then come home singing Hi Ho, realizing there's a stranger in the house. Each of them are armed with a pickaxe and find Snow White asleep. Grumpy is already angry with her for using his bed, while the rest are entranced at this lovely stranger. Dopey stares hardest at her. Before Grumpy can protest and try and wake her up, Happy and Bashful stop his mouth and drag him downstairs. Each of them go to sleep down there. That night, the queen goes to her mirror while holding the jeweled box, asks of it, "Who is the fairest of us all?" As soon as the mirror answers that Snow White is the fairest, she opens the box for the mirror, though thankfully not the audience, to see, and declares, "Snow White lies dead in the forest. The huntsman has brought me proof. Behold her heart." The mirror answers, "Over in the forbidden forest lives Snow White. The heart of a pig lies in your box." The queen looks at it again, enraged, and in the next scene, the huntsman walks into the throne room. "Yes, your majesty. I have not yet rewarded you for bringing her heart." Wine is brought in for both of them. He looks skeptically at it, then at her, giving a "go ahead and drink" nod, and realizes his fate. Taking one last breath, he drinks it and ages rapidly, similar to Indiana Jones' The Last Crusade. His skin falls away and his bones turn to dust. The queen then gets up from her throne, orders someone to clean it up, and maybe bursts into song, except not looking flamboyant, about how she will be the fairest in the end. She orders her guards to find her, lest they endure the same fate. The next morning, Snow White wakes up and sees the dwarfs snoring downstairs still. She's alarmed and frightened. Not only does someone live here, but they're killers, she thinks. She quietly tries to tiptoe out of the house, but one of the wooden planks creaks, waking Doc and Dopey up. She's sick! Awake! He announces. Bashful hides his face. Happy and Sneezy wake up and greet her. Grumpy glares at her, while Sleepy groggily wakes up with a giant yawn. Who's awake? Snow White hesitates and looks at each of them. Please don't hurt me. I'll be out of here. We won't hurt you, Doc replies. Grumpy glares at her harder. Who are you? He demands to know. Snow White. The princess? They asked excitedly. Yes. What are you doing here? Grumpy asks. She then shares that the queen tried to kill her and she ran and got lost. Dopey's eyes widen and he starts making signs, but none of the dwarves are interested in what he has to attempt to say. Though Snow White wishes she could. Never mind him, one says. He hasn't spoken in 10 years. 10 years? What could have happened? None of us know. He never could tell us. Not that he could do anything right, anyways, Grumpy says irritably, to Dopey's dismay. Doc then speaks up. You could stay with us. You'll be safe with us, Snow White replies, and I can help you keep clean and cook for you. And even when they say, oh, that's not necessary, she's like, no, I'll do it. I'm okay with it. I do it back at the castle a lot. Cut to maybe a montage of a time span of maybe, let's say, 3 months where Snow White is still with the dwarves and brings out the best in each of them and vice versa. Once in a while, they'll show her how they want the house, like where they want the vase, how they want the cup washed, or where the chairs are supposed to be set, which occasionally irritates her, but she copes. She's not allowed to bring in wild flowers to the house for Sneezy's sake. Occasionally, while sewing, they each share with her how they came from different kingdoms, outcast, both for their they were outcast for their height, accused of murdering kings, and some of them were treated unfairly. Sneezy for blasting a tornado, Doc for stuttering and being knowledgeable, and Grumpy, well, he refused to disclose. And here's some of the ways that they bring out the best in each other. Doc, though he still stutters, is trying to work hard on his sentences and treats Snow White like another daughter rather than like a tenant. Grumpy, who almost killed somebody once and bears the consequences, still wants nothing to do with Snow White. Though the more Snow White is around, she'll be like, I think deep down you're sweet. And he does everything he can to not smile when she says that. Sneezy, he still sneezes, but she offers him a handkerchief and helps him plug his nose when passing flowers. Bashful is still shy, but over time she gradually helps him overcome his shyness. Sleepy, though there are times where Snow White is unable to sleep for fear of the queen finding her, or her thoughts are running wildly through her mind. One night he sees that and offers her goat's milk to help her sleep. And Dopey and Snow White have some kind of connection. We're going to keep the moment where Snow White teaches him how to whistle his heart out after a different moment of being teased. Because frankly, I did like that scene. She does learn to interpret his signs. He also comforts her when she is very concerned that the queen might know where she is. He shakes his head in assurance. Dopey and Snow White grow to like each other, but aren't sure how to feel. If only I were her height, he seems to say with his eyes, to himself. Slowly she starts to see that she's also wrong about the dwarves. These guys aren't killers like the queen said, and by hanging around with Dopey she sees that they're just like any other man, just different gifts. Also, we're gonna let Snow White's hair grow longer. Most of the time, the daily schedule is the dwarves going to work in the mines. And she'll help around the house, clean up, and occasionally has the help of her animal friends singing the song Whistle While You Work. One day they run out of food, and she decides to go into town. Because, and the dwarves themselves, they don't go into town because everybody is afraid of them. But they still give her a couple of diamonds to trade for money for food. Previously, she had made a cloak for herself. Once she dons it on, she sneaks into town to explore and get acquainted with the villagers. She observes how they are. They're all miserable, and they're all in pain, and they're all getting unfairly taxed. And the guards, always observe the markets, and if one of them looks like it's doing well, they rob and smash the merchandise. Though she's seen the queen treat people in the palace unfairly and wickedly, she has never known what was happening on the outside of the castle and is appalled. After the guards finish up pillaging and destroying a fruit stand, she goes over to help pick up the mess and listens to the owner's complaints and grief over the death of the king and the princess. Though she knows that she's the princess, she doesn't admit it and behaves as though she were a foreigner. And due to her kindness, the owner offers her one free fruit. She brings back an apple to the dwarves and makes a pie and shares her experience as well as the pie. Bashful becomes interested in knowing about the town. Dopey, also eager to share in the fun. The rest are reluctant. They think we're killers, Grumpy angrily says. Maybe we can convince them otherwise, she suggests. After all, you convinced me that the queen was wrong. Over the next couple days, Snow White brings handmade cloaks for the people who have none and trades diamonds for money for food. Occasionally, Bashful, Sneezy, and Dopey sneak into town. None of them get spotted by the guards, which is to their advantage. Eventually, each of the dwarves sneak into town with Snow White, making sure that they're not seen. Unfortunately, as Snow White is examining a vegetable cart, and Sneezy is hiding next to an old crate next to it, the guards pillage a nearby flower cart, knocking it in Sneezy's direction. Unable to control himself, he lets out a loud and hard "Achoo!" literally sneezing the soldiers away from the marketplace. In another part of the town, Grumpy sees a guard threatening to take a child to be the queen's slave. Grumpy steps out and threatens the guard. I have a stare that will kill a dozen men. If you don't want to know what that's like, you'd better get out of here. The guards laugh, though are also uncertain as they believe the queen's lies that the dwarves are all killers. As they're about to leave with the child, he declares, You've been warned! And he stares down at them with a glare. Doc takes out a pair of diamonds, holds it up to the sun, blinding the guards, and gets away with the child, bringing her back to her parents. As the guards stumble around, Dopey and Bashful trip them. In another part of town, Sleepy falls asleep into an empty barrel and rolls down and knocks 5 guards over. He wakes up with a yawn going, what just happened? As soon as the townspeople see who saved them from these guards, they're each impressed. Word quickly spreads. You should have seen it! The queen's guards were outdone by the dwarfs! They saved us! They lift each dwarf in the air, hailing them as heroes, and Snow White beaming with pride. Even Grumpy is unable to be angry, but fights to keep his frown and fails. That night, the dwarves join the town for an indoor party. The dwarves sing the yodel song from the original, play calliope, and dance around with everyone. Everyone is laughing and having a great time. Snow White even coaxes Bashful to go dance with a pretty lady who looks interested in him. I don't think I should, he says, turning bright red. You'll never know it unless you try, she says. Just have fun. He does, and both Bashful and the lady have fun dancing. Dopey wants to dance with Snow White and convinces Sneezy to let him stand on top of him, like the iconic scene, and everyone is laughing and dancing, and Snow White has fun with Dopey. When the town wants to hear a story from Snow White, or whom they deem the stranger, she sings about what happened to the princess, and that she now lives safely away from the queen. As she tells the story, sings the story, the townspeople don't catch on that she's the princess, and one little girl wishes for the princess to reclaim her rightful place. Father taught me about holding on to a wish after making it, she says to the girl assuredly. As everyone starts to go home, the camera shows that they all were not too far away from another wishing well. Unfortunately, the queen has heard about the dwarves in town and sees in the mirror that Snow White is not only among people but also growing more beautiful than she thought, and hears the song. Realizing her soldiers are failing her, she decides to do it herself. She disguises herself as an old peddler, poisons an apple, and decides to secretly follow Snow White home. On the way home, Bashful, more red in the face than usual, shares about the woman he danced with and how she finds him unique. It was scary but amazing, he says. Doc, Sneezy, and Happy slap his shoulders. You lucky dog. Sleepy, with his eyes half shut, is walking slowly, only to have Grumpy shove him. Dopey looks on at Snow White, walking together with a huge smile, while also uncertain. She returns the smile and shares with him how she never imagined this much freedom would result in the dearest friends she's ever had. He returns her smile, takes her hand, and places it on his heart, which Snow White brightens up at, leaving her speechless. She doesn't know how to respond to him, and Dopey, almost embarrassed, then runs home ahead of everyone, leaving Snow White to look on sadly. The queen follows them home, hiding each moment. As soon as she sees where the cottage is, she waits until morning, when the dwarves leave for work, and Snow White is all alone baking a pie. That way nobody can protect her, she says to herself. She has a basket full of apples, with the poisoned one looking the prettiest. She knocks on the door and butters Snow White up as the sweetest girl she's ever known. How she's treated her friend at the fruit stand. Your parents must be proud of you. I hope so, she says. They both died. Oh, you tragic poor child. You know, this one apple, as she picks up the poisoned one, is special and will allow you to see them one more time. All you have to do is say the names of your loved ones and take a bite. Snow White slowly takes the apple. In the meantime, the animals see who is talking to Snow White and try to attack the old woman. However, Snow White shoos them away. "She's an old lady, leave her alone!" Seeing that they cannot save Snow White themselves, they run after the dwarves and urgently try to bring them to Snow White, keeping the moment where Dopey understands one of the birds. Back at the cottage, Snow White brings her in for water, and the disguised queen again offers the apple. Snow White holds up the apple, calls for mother and father, then takes a bite. In that moment, she realizes something was wrong. As the poison takes effect, the queen's attitude changes to eager and triumph, and monologues that it was so easy to kill the whole family. First the mother, then the father, and now you! Now I am the fairest in the land! She collapses as the queen cackles. She barely gets out just as the dwarves arrive. "There she goes!" yells Grumpy. The queen runs as fast as she can, though due to the potion making her old, it's harder for her to run, so she hides in the bushes. The dwarves cannot find her and go back to Snow White, finding her deathlike. Each of them are in mourning for her. The dwarves fashion a coffin bed out of diamonds for her, and they're going to place a glass case over her, but before they do that, each one takes a turn saying goodbye. Dopey is last, and instead of kissing her head, he kisses her lips. Both Snow White and Dopey draw in a sharp breath. She wakes up with a smile. "Snow White!" exclaims a voice she's not heard before. The dwarves, holding the glass case, drop it to the ground in shock, and everyone looks at Dopey, who covers his mouth in shock. He was the one who spoke. "Dopey, you can talk!" everyone exclaims. "How?" "True love's kiss," Snow White replies. "My father once said it was powerful enough to break any spell." Dopey, delighted and amazed that the kiss not only awakened her, but restored her his voice, both kisses her again, and she returns the kiss. When asked what happened, Dopey explains that 10 years ago he had wandered off from the rest of the group and saw the queen murder Snow White's father in the woods, then take a knife and cut up her own dress. As soon as she saw him behind one of the trees, she cursed his voice, making him unable to speak, then accused the dwarves to the townsfolk to throw the villagers off and give them someone to hate. "She's gone too far! It's time for her to pay!" Grumpy declares. "But how?" Snow White asks. "You are the rightful queen," declares Bashful. "And it's time for you to take your rightful place on the throne," says Doc. Then Grumpy kneels and declares, "Long live the queen!" And the rest of the dwarves follow suit. Snow White looks upon them, smiles, and beams with a new sense of confidence in her. And we come to the confrontation/climax. The dwarves go ahead of her through the town, proclaiming the princess had returned. As soon as the townfolk see that it's the stranger, Snow White, they rally behind her to the castle and storm it, armed with pitchforks and torches and whatever else they have, while singing. The guards fight back, afraid of the queen. The dwarves, being smaller than most people, can sneak into the castle more easily, and Grumpy finds the queen first, asking the mirror, "Who is the fairest in the land?" "Famed is thy beauty, Majesty," speaks the mirror, "but lo, a lovely maiden rises to overthrow you," and shows Snow White's face, rallying the crowd to her side. She screams in anger and agony, then spots Grumpy. "You framed us in every kingdom. You stole my friend's voice. You killed the king, and you tried to kill my friend. and for beauty and a crown. The queen readies her hands, now electrifying, and zaps Grumpy against the wall. Sneezy finds them, grabs a bouquet of flowers, shoves them up his nose, and sneezes the queen from Grumpy. As the queen turns her attention to Sneezy, Doc and Dopey pelt diamonds at her head, knocking the crown off her head, in addition to knocking her down. Snow White comes in, seeing them fight, and is about to shatter the mirror with a rock, but the queen grabs her by the throat and strangles her. Just then, Grumpy grabs the nearest crossbow and fires at the queen. He misses, but he hits the mirror, shattering it. "My mirror!" she cries out, as that was the source of her powers. Her grip weakens, releasing Snow White. The queen collapses and dissolves into dust. That's all, and all that's left of her is her crown. Outside, the guards stop fighting as soon as Snow White appears on the balcony overlooking the village, and everybody kneels before their new queen. The next scene shows Snow White being crowned by Doc with a sparkling diamond crown, and Dopey close by. It closes with the kingdom dancing and singing, and the camera zooms out of the book with showing just a picture of Queen Snow White and King Dopey, and ends with the words, "And they all lived happily ever after," as the book closes and the camera fades to black. So how did you guys like the story? And how would you rewrite the remake? Do you think that one day Disney will remember how to be Disney again, instead of the miller, his son, and the donkey? I really hope that day comes soon, because I still love Disney for what it was, and when it was not afraid to be a story. If you like the remake, that's good for you. I'm glad you do. If you like the original movie, good for you too. There's nothing wrong with that. I like seeing Disney tell a story and be a story and allow the audience to figure out the moral and not be a chart of demographics just to please people. Thank you for sticking with me with this 3-part review. I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of the year. Now, bring on Wicked Part 2! Wicked Part 2! Wicked Part 2! Let's do it!